Hello and welcome to another video. I have rewritten the Heroes of Olympus. Disclaimer,
I'm not Rick Riordan. I'm not a actual professional writer. This is just me doing whatever I want, playing God over this story that definitely does not belong to me in any way.
This is completely subjective. If you like the Heroes of Olympus just as is, that's 100% valid, but for me, I wish some things were a little bit different and some things a lot different. Okay, so final section of the video. What happens in each of the books? Let's start out with the first book, The Lost Hero. So obviously, instead of being Annabeth, the one who shows up in the Grand Canyon looking for Percy, it's Percy who shows up looking for Annabeth. And I feel like in this book, everything could turn out the same, except Piper has a personality besides being infatuated with Jason. Also, Piper and Leo's relationship before Jason came into the picture is explored, because they were friends for a whole year before Hera changed their memories of each other, so I feel like that's very important, and we don't get enough of their friendship as we should, because I feel like even though Jason and Leo's relationship is more explored, Leo and Piper's relationship is the most important one and the most interesting one, so I feel like that would be really cool to explore as a platonic relationship between a guy and a girl. Also, even though Aphrodite is not Piper's mom in this version of the story, Aphrodite would still be really drawn to Piper and Jason's situation because she loves all that drama. She loves all that tea and that relationship gossip. So she would really be interesting in the situation that Hera put her in, despite not being even remotely related to Piper. So she would still find her in her dreams, and since Piper is a daughter of Hypnos, what a better place to communicate with someone than in dreams where she controls everything. So I feel like that would kind of make sense, and I'm really proud of that for thinking about that. So basically the end of book 1 is that thanks to Leo's luck and Piper's ability to put people to sleep, they beat Gaia for the time being, and then we get to book 2, Son of Neptune, which obviously cannot be titled Son of Neptune because it's not about the Son of Neptune, so it's a work in progress. I still haven't picked a name for it. So in that book, Annabeth is obviously thrust into Camp Jupiter instead of Percy, and the whole book kind of focuses more in the dynamic of the trio as a whole instead of just basically Hazel and Frank's romantic relationship. So the book, most of it happens the same that it does in the original one, except that it's more focused on Annabeth and Annabeth being able to come into herself and being like, okay, this is what I have to offer. I'm the brains in this, and even though I'm the only one here who doesn't have superpowers, I still bring a lot to the table. And in this book, they also meet a child of Iris, who is very important in the next couple of books because I feel like part of the disconnect I felt with the Heroes of Olympus, unlike with the Percy Jackson and the Olympians, is that we don't get to see as much from the camps or the less important campers. So having a child of Iris introduced and being able to make that connection through Iris messages for them, I feel like would be a very good thing for the series overall. So at the end of this, the last thing that happens in this book is that they're walking back and the Argo 2 appears out of nowhere. So that leads us to the Mark of Athena. The Mark of Athena starts with the Argo 2 getting to Camp Jupiter, and who's on it, you might ask? Well, it's Piper, Jason, Leo, and Percy, because Percy, even though he doesn't get a point of view, is important to the story. So they get there, Percabeth has the cutest reunion ever, but then everything goes to Hades, basically, like it does in the original version, because of this time's Leo's really bad luck sometimes, which makes sense. I'm making all these connections here, but it makes sense. So basically, Jason X Brick is still a thing, but when they're trying to escape, Percy obviously sacrifices himself to help them escape, and he gets captured by Camp Jupiter, which is the excuse I have for him not going on the quest with the rest of the 7 who did manage to get on the ship. So from there, everything that happens in the Argo 2 would kind of be similar, but instead of not being to contact anyone, because they have the daughter of Iris at Camp Jupiter, they can talk to Percy because Percy is being held prisoner and Reyna is the one doing like all the things. So Reyna and Percy, while Percy is imprisoned, get to know a lot about each other. Percy kind of remembers because he still has his memories, so they talk about the time where they were at Circe's island, they bond, they become friends, and because of Reyna and because she started to like Percy and see him as a very loyal person and trustworthy person, she lets the daughter of Iris help him reach the people at the Argo 2. So that's how Persebeth have interactions all throughout this book. And then at some point, Reyna trusts him so much that she frees him and Percy goes over and he tries to find the Argo 2, just like he did in the Titan's Curse. So even though it's not his quest, he tries to tag along, which leads us to Percy being kidnapped by the giants and being taken to Rome. And instead of having to free Nico, like in the original version, it is Percy who they have to free from the giants. Now, meanwhile, while that is happening in the Argo 2, they are having a blast, except not really. But I feel like now that Nico is part of the Seven, we get Nico and Leo interactions, which would be comedic gold. Also, no tensions between Leo and Frank because, as I said before, Frank has decided to like push his feelings aside and focus on the mission, on the quest. So they're friends, they're chill. So Leo and Frank can be friends. They can bond over their bad luck and feeling like they're not really the usual kid that comes out from their godly parents. I think they could bond over that. Now that Jasper didn't end up together in the first book, even though we might get a romantic subtext from both of them, it's not their main plot line for both of them. So we get more focus on the friendship between the three girls, who is really not at all explored in the books. And now that Percy isn't there, we get to see Annabeth interact with other people in the Seven. So we see Annabeth with Nico, which I would really love to see. Annabeth with Jason being like the two leaders, I would love to see that too. And also Annabeth, Piper, and Hazel, I think that would be really, really cool to see as well. So we get a lot of different interactions in this book. And instead of like taking place in like a 2-week period, I'm going to say it happens over the course of 2 months. That's right, I said it. The dates don't matter in my version because I want them to bond. And I feel like taking Percy and the romantic feelings of everyone else out of the equation really, really helps with that. So while they're bonding, Percy bonds with Reyna and then he gets kidnapped by the giant, which leads us to the climax of this story. And they free Percy, obviously, and then they get to Annabeth right after she defeats Arachne and she gets tangled up. Another beautiful Persebeth reunion, but just when you think everything's better, Persebeth is reunited. They get pulled down into Tartarus. I'm getting too excited maybe, but I really like this version. Look at this, like this strand of hair is breaking free out because I'm so excited. But yes, this is like the climax of this version would be so intense because Persebeth hasn't been together for like this whole book. So the fact that Percy falls into Tartarus with Annabeth when they haven't been together all book is like, we're going to get Persebeth interactions in the next book even though they're literally in hell. But you know, like we get something out of it. So that is the end of book 3. And also Leo can blame himself because of his bad luck. Like, isn't this beautiful? Which leads us to the House of Hades, which I feel like would mostly be the same because all of the characters in the House of Hades in the original version are the same characters that I have in this weird version that I have created. Like the basic outline would still be there. Like still, I think this would be like a good place for Jasper if it were to happen to take place because they have moved on from their fake feelings because honestly they were fake feelings and fake memories implanted in their brains by Hera. So they're like, now we know each other and there might be something there, so they might like start exploring it in this book, and Piper might feel the need to step up as a leader since Annabeth isn't there, and since they were best friends, she might feel the need to step into her shoes and fill that role. So then the dynamics between the remaining characters are very important and they're what's explored in this book, and we only get Annabeth points of views, but Percy is with her, so that's a Persebeth for all you Persebeth fans out there. Basically, Leo also goes to Ogygia. If you know me, you know that I don't really ship Cleo anymore, but I know there are people who are, so let me make a version of Cleo that I can stand behind. So basically, they're there, they bicker at the beginning, but then they become friends. They're like, man, we both have terrible luck, and they bond over that, but nothing romantic happens. Like, Leo starts to have a crush on her because Leo is just that kind of guy. He wears his heart on his sleeve and he falls so easily for girls. So that starts to happen, and nothing actually happens. When he leaves, Calypso kisses him on the cheek because she's not about to fall for like the millionth guy that falls on her island and tells her that he's coming back for her. So she's like cautious. She's like, okay, you're cool. If you come get me, we'll be friends and we'll see what happens from there. So that's what happens. Leo comes back, he helps them, they get to the House of Hades, everything happens the same. And basically at the end, when Persephone is rescued, Nico's like, okay, now that Reyna is here and Percy and Reyna have had their cute bromance reunion, Nico and Reyna head off with Coach Hedge and they take the statue over to Camp Half-Blood. And Percy, since there have to be 7, he's like, okay, well, since I'm here, I will stay. And of course, I'm gonna stay with Annabeth since we have so much shared trauma. And that's where book 4 ends. Obviously, The Blood of Olympus is the book that I wanted to change the most. So you could say it's nothing like the original version, like not at all. So basically, Nico's point of view in this book makes sense because he's part of the original 7. So it would make sense to still follow him when he goes back to the United States with Reyna. So we get his chapters, but instead of it taking them 3/4 of the book to get to Camp Half-Blood, it takes them like the first third at most. So they get there pretty early, and then they get to Camp Half-Blood, they talk to Camp Jupiter, and they get things sorted out so much quicker than they do in the book, because I want at least half of the book to be a battle, like we got in The Last Olympian. I want this book to be a nice final book, which centers on the war that's been built up for 4 books. So basically, by this point, we have known the characters for like 4 months. They've been 4 months together, which I feel like helps them bond and connect so much more than like the month they spent together in the original series. So Nico and Reyna are at Camp Half-Blood for more than half of the book. They're there, which leads Nico and Will to have more interaction, which for those people who think Solangelo is rushed would like actually help them ship Solangelo more, because they would have more of a base, not like more of a foundation, because they spend more time together preparing to defend Camp Half-Blood. So that's one part of the story. On the other side of the story, there's Persephone, and Persephone actually gets chapters. I don't know yet if I want to give Percy chapters in this last book. I think he might deserve them since he does become one of the unofficial 7 in my version. So Percy and Annabeth both get chapters, and they explore their trauma as a couple. They're like, okay, this is where we're at, this is what's happened to us, how do we move past from this? And I feel like that's very important because that was not at all explored in the last book. So besides that, more of their characters' interactions are explored. Specifically, Leo and Percy, they bond over their experiences with Calypso and how Percy thought he'd helped her, but you can never trust the gods' words, and over their bad luck. That's so much better than them like fighting, or at least Leo being very stupid about the whole Calypso situation. So that happens, and then their fight with Gaia happens in Greece, and then like we still have at least 150 pages left of the book, and then we go back to Camp Half-Blood. There's battle there, and the battle is important, it's intense, it lasts more than 2 minutes, and at the end of the day, who saves the world? It's our girl, our underrated girl, our underused girl, Piper McLean, who saves the day. Because whose daughter is she? She is the daughter of Hypnos, the god of sleep, and she puts Gaia to sleep forever. By the way, Gaia is not just some like copy and paste villain who just wants to take over the world to take over the world. She wants to take over the world because humans and demigods and gods have been polluting her for years. She has a reason to want to take over the world and get rid of the human race, because they're the ones who are polluting the earth, they're the ones who are polluting the water, they are basically killing the Earth, and that gives her motivation for wanting to like reshape the world. And at the end of the day, the demigods understand why she wanted to do that, because especially Percy and Annabeth, they saw what happened to Pan, the god of the wild. So they make a deal at the end of the book with the gods. They're like, okay, we have to fix this. So while Jason is trying to fix all the relationships with the minor gods, the rest of them come to an understanding about what's happening with the world and why Gaia did the things she did, and they try to fix that as well, which kind of ties into what Grover is doing during the trials of Apollo. I think maybe you were expecting me to kill someone at the end, but I just really like the versions of these characters that I like modified, so I couldn't bring myself to kill any of them. Maybe someone loses a limb. I don't know, that's a consequence. Maybe that could happen. And yeah, I think that's the end of the Heroes of Olympus fixed by yours truly. I don't know if you guys like this or if you're completely opposed to the idea, but I don't know, while I was talking about it, I don't know if you noticed, but I got really excited over this headcanons, because the thing that bothers me the most is that the seven don't feel like a family, and they just feel like a bunch of couples thrust together and forced to save the world together. And I just want them to be like the best found family, to have really, really tight bonds and based on friendship. Like the couples, I feel like Frazel is a good couple to have developed over the years, so maybe after Trials of Apollo they could get together, or a bit after that, and maybe Jason and Piper do get together by the end of House of Hades, but then by the end of Blood of Olympus, or somewhere between that, they break up, because that's what couples do, and that happens especially if you've based your whole relationship on a traumatic experience. Sometimes when that traumatic experience is over, you have nothing else to bond over. So that's something that could happen to Jasper, although you can obviously have your own headcanons where they do end up together. It's completely up to you. Obviously Percabeth ends up together in my version, and then Solangelo has more of a foundation because they spent more time in that book together and their relationship was more developed. Obviously their relationship is also developed in the Trials of Apollo, but not from like we as an audience, we're just told that it's developed, we don't actually get to see it. So I feel like seeing it for half of the book is very beneficial to their relationship, and that's basically all I have to offer. Obviously also Leo goes back to Calypso, he finds her, and then he brings back Calypso to Camp Half-Blood, where Calypso stays because she wants to be with other people who are kind of like her, because she's never been with people before. So she stays at Camp Half-Blood, she trains like one of the campers, she makes friends, she finds who she is. Like when she's with other people, she discovers who she actually is, not just based on which boy falls on her island that week. And then Leo decides to stay with her as well, because he feels responsible for her, and obviously he stays at Camp Half-Blood and their relationship can develop from there. If you want it to be a romantic relationship, it can. If you want it to be just like a platonic friendship relationship, it can also happen. So that's it. That is me fixing or rewriting the Heroes of Olympus. I'm just looking at my clock right now, and I have been filming this for an hour, and I feel like this is going to be hella long. I hope you guys liked it. Leave a like if you did. Leave a comment telling me if you agree or disagree with the liberties I took while rewriting this series, and please subscribe if you haven't yet, and click that bell button so you get notifications every time I post a new video. I post videos twice a week on my channel, so there's a lot of content from me, and I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye!